Hi, I'm Nicole Brown, and this is Around the District. And today I'm going to be interviewing Cedric Collins. He is a school board member, elected official with the Kyrene School Board, and an educator here in Arizona. And so, Cedric, welcome to Around the District.
Thank you guys for having me.
Just to get us started, give us a little bit of information about you.
Um, as Nicole mentioned, my name is Cedric Collins. I am a 20-year educator. I have had the privilege of teaching at every level of academia, from kindergarten all the way up to the collegiate level. I am currently a high school teacher in the Casa Grande Union High School District, where I'm also here in the area of Kyrene. I am an elected school board member, along with several other things involved. I'm involved in several other things throughout the community.
What inspired you to run for the school board?
What inspired me to run for the school board? Well, that's a very layered question. I grew up with education being very, very important in my household. I was raised by my grandparents, who had a sixth and third grade education, respectively, because they grew up in the era of Jim Crow. Like, people, because they look at pictures in a book and they see black and white photos, they think that was a long time ago. I'm 45 years old, and my grandparents raised me. So my grandfather was born in 1913 and my grandmother was born in 1930. And they grew up in that time where they were not allowed to go to school. And so they really stressed education to me. And, I remember, I was a straight A student in elementary school, and I got my first B because I changed schools because I was smart. And I remember getting my first B, and I flipped out because getting an A in our house was the standard, right? And I was like, I'm going to get a whooping. Like, I'm going to get in trouble. But my grandmother, she would always give me this speech. Colin Powell, I don't know if, some of the viewers out there, you may or may not remember Colin Powell. He passed away some years ago. But Colin Powell was like the standard in my household. Every time I would get a bad grade or get into a little mischief, my grandma was like, you think Colin Powell? I hated Colin Powell growing up because I was always being compared to him. But I get it. That was the standard, black standard in which they knew and what they, held, because in their time, and even when I was a kid in the 80s, there were really no prestige. I don't want to say prestigious, but that was what we have now is what we call black excellence. That was really no black excellence on TV like that. That's why
Yeah, you didn't see it.
whether you like him or not, the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
The Cosby Show was very important to. That's why it was one of the highest rated shows, because for black people, for us seeing that show, to see an educated black man with an educated black wife, they were together with kids. That was huge for us. Because if you look at movies from that time, we were either pimps, prostitutes, drug dealers, or
Or
our slaves.
living in the
Ghetto, right? Even one of the most popular shows amongst black
Right.
people is what?
Good times.
You know what I mean? So that's why, so education was drilled into me. They had me watching Eyes on the Prize. They had me watching all these different shows. So it was something that I always strived, and I know how education can change your life. And I don't mean it in a formal sense, because my grandparents, even though they had really low academic education, they were highly intelligent in their own ways. Like, they just randomly knew things, and just the knowledge that they imparted upon me. Like, this is going to sound really random, but it's funny to me because I bring this up all the time. Ralph Macchio, right? You know who Ralph Macchio is, the Karate
Yeah,
Kid.
the Karate Kid.
I remember watching the movie with my grandparents, and my grandfather was like, that's crazy. That man almost 30 years old playing a high school kid.
He did.
And I'm sitting there like, no, he's not. He's 19. And my grandfather's like, no, that man's like 28 years old. But how did he know that?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But they knew that kind of stuff. It was just like really random stuff that they knew. So when I say formal education, you can be educated in a variety of ways. And my grandfather used to always tell me, because my grandfather died in 2006. My grandmother died in 1995. And I remember him telling me, you know, don't be an educated fool. You can go to college, get your degree, but that doesn't mean you know anything.
Mhm.
He goes, it doesn't take a smart person to regurgitate information. And this is a man who had a third grade education and couldn't even read.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's the primary reason why I ran, is because I know how important education is to our society. But I also know, and I'm very frank and honest, I also know when we talk of education, well, black kids and brown kids are the kids that are left out the most.
Right.
And they're the ones affected, like when we have these budget cuts. Because when they do budget cuts in education, what's the first thing to go? The programs in the inner city, right?
Right.
And so, there's a reason why they have that saying, the school to prison pipeline, that's real. And a lot of people don't realize how real that is. And so, um, I just wanted to make sure, getting on that board, I wanted to make sure that all students, you know, are cared for. All students feel like their voices are heard. Their parents feel the same way, because a lot of parents are intimidated by schools. It could be from their lack of education. A lot of the times, some parents don't come to school. Not, sometimes they just don't show up. People think, oh, they don't care about their kids' education. No, it's not that they don't care. Some parents are literally intimidated to go to schools because they may not have achieved a certain level of education in their life. So they feel as if their voices aren't being respected or heard. So they don't show up to the school.
Sometimes they don't even know how important it is because it wasn't a priority for some of them growing up, right? Because they had to get out in the community and work to help with their families.
Oh,
So
definitely. That's a huge thing. A lot of people disregard is how how students and a lot of people from the inner city community, they have to work at an earlier age, not as a privilege to save money and get ahead. In some households, they have to work to make sure that the lights don't get turned off, that they're eating. And that's a very sad thing, especially we live in the so quote unquote greatest country in the world, but yet we have teenagers who have to work to help pay for, household expenses,
right.
basic household
And as an
expenses.
educator, I'm a former educator, you're an educator right
Hmm.
now, you teach in the high schools.
Hmm.
We see that these younger kids today have more issues than even I would ever thought of growing up, right? Because I didn't have the same issues. And of course, it depends on your economic status. But
Hmm.
when you ran for the school board and then you actually won,
Hmm.
how did you feel?
Wow. So apparently
Because I know
I
you put your blood, sweat, and tears in there because it kind of helped you with
yeah,
it.
yeah, nah. Apparently I was the first black man elected to the Kyrene school board. So I feel privileged, like, hey, I have a little bit of history here. Um, Also with that, me, I do my history, I do my fact checking as best as I can. And there are over 1,200 school board members in the entire state of Arizona. Out of that 1,200, there were a total of 15 black board members. 15. And 10 were women and 5 were men. Well, you could say 13 because some of them are biracial and depends on what they want to identify with.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean. So one day they black and the next day they whatever they're mixed with. But I get it. That's an old Hollywood thing. So, but yes, you're right. You helped me a whole lot. We went out canvassing together, and I'm glad I want to mention this. People don't realize how difficult it is for black people to canvass. Oftentimes you get this, oh, just go out there and knock on doors. And no, let me explain something to you from your point of privilege that you may not understand. When you go to a door, they see friendly. When I go to a door, even you, as a 5'2" black woman, they see
Thank you for
threat.
giving me 2 inches.
they
But
see they see threat. And I remember when I ran for state ledge, because I also ran for state ledge. That's how I got involved in the LD. Of course, I was unsuccessful in that, but I tell people all the time, even when you lose, you win. Because running for that allowed me to make the relationships that I have today that helped me in the school board election.
right.
So I tell people all the time, just because you lose doesn't necessarily mean you lost. You got to always find opportunities in adversity. But back to the point I was making, going and canvassing, I remember people threatened to shoot me through doors. I had the police called on me. And as a black person, and other groups don't understand this, people don't understand things until it happens to them, and they don't know what it's like. How many times have we seen the news where we hear black kids are shot through doors?
Right.
What just happened in it was a guy, I want to say it was Georgia. He threatened to shoot this little black girl because she went and knocked on his door. He saw on his ring camera, and he literally told her on the ring camera, "I'll shoot you." A 10-year-old kid. Now, don't get me wrong, kids can be violent. I get it. But really, dude? Really?
Right.
So I really just want to put that point out there that when people criticize black people for not wanting to canvas or go knock on doors, check your privilege. Check it. Because you can go in places that I can't go into.
Right. I would have to say from my perspective, even like you said, I'm 5 foot, female. I was never comfortable doing it either, and I would not do it without somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And mainly when you and I did it, we did a lot of lid dropping
Mm-hmm.
versus knocking on the doors. But when I knocked on the doors, I was usually with somebody who was not black because
Mm-hmm.
that made me feel safe. You
Right.
know what I mean? And then you had to stop altogether, and people did it for you because of the things that happened to you.
Right. And a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, even she won't mind me mentioning this, but Shante Rothschild, she got elected to the school board in Maricopa. She had a situation where a guy pulled a gun on her. She's a woman.
Hmm.
A woman.
Yeah.
And she had a guy pull a gun on her and I was like, did they have no soliciting signs? Regardless, that don't justify it.
Yeah.
But she's like, no. She goes, I just went, knocked on the door, and the guy came out yelling at her with his gun out, and she was just like, hey, I'm just running for office, and she just said she just left.
Yeah.
So people have to understand that because see, they don't know what that's like, right? Because even when they go into our communities, there's an unwritten rule: you don't touch them because the police will come and get you. See, as a black
Well, and
person,
I don't think that's just it either. I think that other communities are more welcoming and are
well,
less afraid because we've dealt with the situations are
oh,
different for
definitely,
us, right?
but it's different for us. But at the same
Yeah.
time, let's be real. I'm very real. As a black man, if I go into certain neighborhoods and I don't come from that neighborhood or belong to that gang in that neighborhood, I'm getting checked.
Yeah.
Come on now, I grew up in LA.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
that's true. 'Cause
and they're set tripping, right? They call it set tripping. You a black man, you don't belong in this neighborhood. So the neighborhood people are checking you.
Mhm.
But I've seen white people
Because
walk through
you could be
the ops,
you could be undercover.
but I've seen white people
Yeah.
walk through those neighborhoods and nobody questioned them. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is check the privilege before you start criticizing black people as to why they're not doing something, right? And so and try to take it from that perspective. I'm glad we have the people that we have. I'm thankful for all the people that canvassed for me and with me because without them, I wouldn't have been successful in that regards because they can go and knock on doors and get people's attention because some people will open doors that they won't open for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and I actually got kind of smart. I'm not going to gatekeep this. I saw what not you and you saw me do this. I would leave a message on the Ring camera. Remember, I saw
Yeah.
people with Ring cameras
Yeah.
because a Ring camera is pretty much like a voicemail for your house.
It
That's
is.
how I look at it. So when we would drop off lit, I would just tell the people who I was through the Ring camera and why I was dropping off this literature at their home. I had stuff for Stacy, Patty, and Mitzi, and I would just say, "Hey, my name is Cedric Collins." But you were there,
Yeah.
so and that's why I would do that because even though I didn't get a chance to interact with them because they wouldn't open their door, I still interacted with them via their Ring cameras, and everybody watches their Ring camera.
Right.
So that's something that you future politicians can use. If you see a Ring camera and no one opens that door, leave a message. It's like a voicemail. That one's free.
How did it make you feel though? You won. With all of that said, you won.
You know,
So how did you feel?
I felt really good. The funny thing is my niece was in town for her playoff volleyball game the day of the election. And so after I did all the electioneering throughout the day, I actually went to watch her play volleyball and her team got eliminated. And I went to go eat with her and some of her teammates. And so I was like, man, but it was a surreal feeling. It just brought me back to my grandparents. Those were the first people that I thought about is, you know, they always wanted me to be the best that I could be. And for me, that was like the ultimate honoring their legacy in winning a school board seat. Yeah, you don't get paid for it, and it's not luxurious like some of the other seats, but for them to have a value in education and for me to be elected and be the first black man elected to a school board in that capacity, the district that I'm in, that was huge for me. And like I said, I even in private I shed some tears of joy and at the same time sadness that they were not here to witness that. But at the same time, I was very, very, very proud, especially looking at my journey and where I've come from and all the things I've endured, growing up as a teen and a kid, and even in education as a black man, I've encountered a lot of bull crap as a black male educator. You can't even sometimes even get a job unless you're going to coach a sport, regardless of your degrees and your certifications. So that was really huge for me, and I thank everyone who voted for me and supported me in that time.
All right. Thank you, Cedric. Very good insight.
Yeah.
Join us next week as we continue the discussion with Cedric on being an elected school board member and his experiences.